Welcome to the Tarot Tapestry, a weaving of self-discovery, where three tarot mavens put their heads and hearts together to offer their wisdom and insights about the tarot. We hope that you find this helpful in your personal journey to self-discovery and growth.
Join us as we explore ways to use tarot for self-reflection and self-correction.
Together, we'll discover new ways to use tarot to weave threads of understanding into the tapestry of your life.
Hello, everybody. We're so glad you're here. Today, we're going to be talking about the Lovers. And Linda, I know, has very strong feelings about this card. And I should, or I want to study it a little bit more because, you know, the whole Mary Greer thing, your soul card, your life card, whatever. Mine are the Lovers and the Devil. So that'll be fun to get to. But yeah, the Lovers. So let's see. We're going to start with keywords. I'm looking at the Rider-Waite-Smith, and it's the two, you know, I guess it's supposed to be Adam and Eve, and they're standing there, and the angel is above them with his little arms and wings out, and Eve is looking up at him, and Adam is looking at her rack, and the angel's just like up there in the sky. And I know it is about choices. And I think that the artwork, the original artwork, does a pretty good. It's kind of like you have choices to make. I look at this from the perspective of Eve, right? She's the one making a choice. Adam's just standing there like, duh, what do we do? And the angel's like, duh, what do you do? So is she going to use her judgment or God's judgment or Adam's judgment, or, you know, what is she deciding? This has never looked like romantic love to me. This has looked like obligation and commitment. And, you know, this choice that she's going to make, Adam's going to go along with it because, you know, that's how they do, I guess, in the Bible. And
plausible deniability.
Yeah, there you go. I didn't decide, she decided. But I'm not crazy about this card. I don't know. It's never really been a very meaningful card to me. It's just been kind of like, well, there it is again, I guess. I don't pull it a whole lot when I'm doing readings, probably because it knows I don't show her that card, she'll fuck up the reading. But
But you know, it's interesting how not too long ago we had that workshop where they started to talk about the constellations and how yours happens to be the Lovers. You know, so it's quite interesting how that workshop came up, and now you do have this little what shall we call it? What would be the appropriate term for your relationship with the card, the Lovers?
I understand all of the, I guess, themes that go along with this card. Like, she's making a decision, and it's not just a decision for her. It's something that's going to affect a lot of people, like her kids in the future and her husband now. And, you know, God is going, yes, no, you're right, you're wrong, you're, you know, whatever. So this always feels very, like a very confining card to me. Like, everybody's looking at you, you decide, and all of the consequences are yours. And you don't always get all of the, you know, got the angels there. And, you know, I guess it shows a higher power that, if you're looking at it from a more optimistic standpoint, I guess, that's her higher self. But I just have always felt like it's these two other beings looking at her like, what are you gonna do? You know?
Yeah.
And she's just standing there like naked, and the snake's even there behind her, like, what are you gonna do? And it's I don't know. It just
Wait, Angie, do you feel that there are people behind you going, what are you going to do? What are you
yeah,
going to do?
sometimes, you
Yeah,
know, like
yeah,
you always do. You always feel judged in your life
absolutely.
when you're growing up and making decisions and going to school or not going to school, or getting a job or not getting a job, or getting married or not getting married, or having kids or not having kids. Like, you're a woman, you can't do anything right. Somebody is always going to have a problem with it. And there's
Absolutely.
just not a lot of room for individuality and original thinking in this card, unless you are somebody who can go, I'm going to go my own way and I don't care if I'm naked. I'm going to go that way. And you guys either stay there or go a different way. If you don't want to come with me, don't. But
Yeah. And I'm
yeah.
hoping that, in these times now, although, currently today being
Mm,
election day, things are pretty like tense, but, I'm really hoping that as time moves forward, that will change. Like, we're already slowly seeing, women's roles and how women are being perceived changing and evolving. And, hopefully it will continue to be that way to where, when a woman is walking down naked because she doesn't feel like wearing a
yeah.
shirt, just like men can walk around without wearing a shirt and nobody
Hmm.
says a thing, to have a woman do the same thing. But I wanted to talk about the when you brought up choices. And, in some of the reading that I was doing, it was like two choices that you make. And how they kind of described the choices was one was a choice that related to feelings, and the other choice was one that related to like your mind and your thinking. And the feeling one was associated with more of the feminine energy, and the thinking was more of the masculine energy. But then also intertwined in that feminine energy was this idea of like your senses, sensuality, lust and that kind. And then on the opposite side, it was more like, intellect and what is the right road to take, and I was telling Angie earlier that I decided to look at my Marseille deck because I really like how they portray this card. In the Marseille deck, it's called the Lover, and in the Rider Waite, it's called the Lovers. And the picture is very different. So in the Marseille deck, you have a male figure in the middle, and there are two women flanking him. And then above him is a cherub that is pointing an arrow, just so you ladies can see it, pointing an arrow down. Um, and the arrow is pointing towards what appears to be the younger woman. And they talk about the character in the middle has two choices to make. And they're sort of like, I guess they can be considered kind of like exaggerating the choices by making it like polar opposite of choices, and how the choices that you make um, have an effect on your life moving forward. And then just one other thing, and then I'm going to let Linda talk because I can like go on about this. In this deck, in this the Marseille card, if you notice his legs on the bottom, they're kind of like opened up, and it looks like an upside down Y. So if I were to turn it up, you would see it looking like a Y,
Hmm.
right? His legs are kind of open, and that's like the capital Y. And they talked about and I want to read it because it was quite fascinating. um they in the French school, right, they linked the card to the form of the letter Y, whose inverted shape is signaled by the man's body and legs. So followers of the Pythagoras in ancient Greece regarded the Y shape as a symbol of the choice a person makes in his youth. The bottom line going upwards is the course of childhood. At the, I always mess this up, bifurcation point in the center, everything is open, and a small push to the right or the left may decide which road the person will take. But once life advances along one of those two branches, it becomes difficult and eventually impossible to go back and reverse the choice.
Ooh, I
So
like
it's like,
that.
yeah, like I really like to look at it how, and because it's a major arcana, it's a pretty heavy card, right? It has a lot of weight to it. And if you think about, we make choices all the time, but some choices that we make are pretty intense. And we can make a choice and then know that we can't necessarily go back and
Mhm.
like change it. Like we just have to kind of deal with whatever occurs from that choice. So that's probably totally going woo, way off
No, I
of what
like
we
that
started
so
doing,
much.
but
I
I
like
just I
that so
needed to
much
mention
because
that.
in that card, it's showing someone actually having a choice between two things. You got to remember what happened to Adam and Eve. They got kicked out of Eden. that's not really showing someone who has a choice. It's basically just like getting kicked out into the world naked and alone and having God and everybody in the world judging you for how you survive, for what you have to do to survive. And are you doing
Yeah.
it good enough? And I think that's one of the reasons that I feel so much um like I that card is I feel very restrictive, you
Yeah.
know? And but I like the Marseille take. Is that I might be saying it wrong.
Marseille. Marseille.
Marseille. I
Yeah.
like that one. I don't have any of those decks now. I probably need one.
I think you should because I think it's a very interesting some of it is very similar to the Rider-Waite, but then there's a lot of it that kind of just goes in a different direction. So if you're ever interested in doing so, I'll also suggest two books that you could get that are pretty
Excellent.
helpful in it. So I'm sorry, Linda. Did you want to share and say something?
No, I've just been listening very interestingly. I've been doing my own research too and listening to other things and just kind of trying to get a very broad spectrum. But the and I have not liked this card for a lot of reasons, but mainly because of the name. I'm not sure. And the more I read about it and study about it and think about it, I think it's a misnomer. And I feel like it could, if it was called duality or integration or something like that, it would feel less fraught to a lot of people. But for me, I don't, again, just like with the devil, with like judgment and stuff like that, I don't fall back to the biblical look of it. Although if you want to go back to, they got kicked out of the Garden of Eden because of a choice. They didn't make the choice well, I guess they did make the choice because God said, don't touch this or there will be consequences. And they chose to do that. And then there were consequences. Anyway, let's not go there. But
But you know what, Linda? Just for 1 second, we are
Yeah.
going to go there after you finish what you're saying about it, because there is something really important about her making that decision. But I would love for you to finish what you're saying, and then we'll get back to it.
Well, for me, I mean, it is more like a duality. And again, I'm looking at the Rider-Waite, which is kind of colorful. And then I pulled out again the Thoth deck, it's interesting because I'm just going to describe it. It's in the middle of it. Is a king and a queen because they have on those ermine capes, with the black and white things on the shoulders. They're standing in front of what appears to be a figure, but it's not. I mean, it's kind of wrapped up in, because of the style of the art, is you see these two hands over the king and the queen, which you could interpret it a couple of ways. You can interpret it as a benediction. You can there's no strings, but it almost is like there's a puppet master, and so standing behind these two, they're kind of looking at each other. So standing behind the two of them are two young, they're like babies or children, and they're naked. One of them is white, one of them is black. One of them is holding a bouquet of flowers. One of them is holding, it looks like a bat or a piece of 2x4. They each have one of them has a cup and one of them has a sword, and their arms are crossed, like how you drink out of each other's cups, kind of like that. At the bottom of that, there's an egg with a snake around it. And on either side, there's a lion and an eagle. And then there's a cherub up above all of them that's blindfolded and is shooting an arrow down towards them. So there's a lot of imagery there, amazing amount of imagery. But bottom line, when I think about this card after doing all this reading and stuff, it's a card of combining. It's about the divine masculine, the divine feminine, the duality we have, light and dark, the inner and outer life, our shadow self and our self that we present to the world, and how we go through life trying to integrate those things within ourselves. And so it's like doing that, and then combining it with the source energy, which the angel or the being in this card to me is more like a representation of the source energy versus the avenging angel come down to punish you. I mean, you can interpret that however you want, but if you can combine the dualities of yourself and then combine it with the source energy, then hopefully you can find that balance with the opposing forces and come into this understanding of yourself as a whole and complete person. And
I liked that. Woo. That reminds me,
I'm
that
so-
so
makes me
glad you
think
brought up the
of,
Thoth.
yeah,
Yeah.
I can't say anything
absolutely.
today. I read in it is by Gerd Ziegler. It's called Tarot Mirror of the Soul. And in that book, he says that it is the emperor and the empress getting married, and the hermit is the officiant,
Okay.
which is
Ooh.
kind of interesting, and talks about how it is more of a combining, like you said, a combining of inner and outer and this and that and the other thing, and to um make the choices that integrate things into your life that you want.
Right.
It's not as
Right.
much, it's not as churchy, I guess, as the other
Yeah,
one.
and I don't, when I look at the Rider-Waite one, I kind of can see that Adam might be looking at Eve, but I really just think of the angel as like he's just looking down. I don't really get the focus on Eve that you get out of it, Angie, for whatever reason that might be.
Perhaps I'm taking some things personally.
It could
my life.
be. It could be. And then in the Thoth deck, there's just the figure, which is kind of doing the benediction or whatever. It doesn't even have a face. It's like it's got a hood or a veil over it, so you can't tell if it's male or female or whatever. It's just, it looks like it's just kind of this, maybe a superior being or whatever. But yeah, I think now that I think of it as, combining or integrating things that are fighting within a person, especially with all the shadow work that we're doing this month and all that stuff. It's like, if you can come to terms with things that have gone on, say in your past, or things that are, or if you're self-aware to realize that you've brought some of those things or continue to bring some of those things from your past with you as you go along, and then you can do something, whether it's therapy or journaling or pulling cards or a combination of all three of those things, to figure out how to accept those kind of warring parts, and I don't go down the parts work because I don't really know about parts, so I can't say it's the firemen or whatever they are in that internal family systems thing. I don't know that, but there are pieces of yourself, that you always have something's going on. There's always some sort of little internal disagreement that you have with another piece of yourself. And if you can get all that to reconcile it, and it doesn't have to be perfect, because I don't think that we ever get there, but just to the part of at least being less uncomfortable, with it, and that you can feel more of a complete person. And I think that's the goal of all of us in the end, is that we want to be complete within ourselves. At least I do, because I don't feel like there's anybody out there. I mean, I feel like if I'm not complete within myself, for instance, I wouldn't be a good partner. If I want a partner because I want somebody to complete me, then I'm not going to be a good partner. I need to be a complete person, and I'm looking for another complete person to buddy up with and say, let's go through life together and make our lives as two complete people really nice together, and not looking for somebody to fill those spaces that I have in myself, because I need to do that for myself.
I I love that. You know, when you were talking earlier and you were talking about combining those two parts of ourselves, right? Like the feminine and the masculine energy, and learning how to combine those energies together to kind of fulfill us or to bring us into better balance. It made me think about, you know, our journey for authenticity, right? That's part of authenticity, is how can we combine these two energies that can be very opposite of one another, right? They are opposite of one another, but they need to come together somehow in order to make us whole, right? To go to the other extreme, you know, I don't believe is going to bring you any closer to finding your true self. You know, and
Right.
then Linda, you were talking a little bit about how some of the choices that you make in your past, and how sometimes we can get caught up in why we did what we did, right? So obviously, if we're going back and questioning a choice or some of the choices that we made, and it's affecting our life because we can't seem to come to terms and accept those choices that we made. And
Right.
now those, that lack of acceptance is coming with you as you're moving forward, and it's affecting all those different parts of your life, you know. And so, like, one of the things that they were talking about in one of the two books that I was reading was this idea that how we have to learn to come to terms and almost put to rest our conflict with the decisions that we made in the past, because holding on to them does nothing. You can't go back and change anything,
Right. You
right?
can't
All
change
you
it,
can, exactly, all you
but if
can
you,
do. Mhm.
yeah, well, I was going to say, but if you just spend all of your time, like, and I've had to work on this with some things really recently, even with the training that I was in a few weeks ago, is just like, at the time that I made these particular decisions, I thought I was doing the right thing. And I thought I was doing the best that I knew how to do. And, I didn't make these decisions trying to hurt anybody else. I didn't make these decisions trying to do bad for myself. And so I just have to say that was then, this is now. I wouldn't do that if I was having to do it now, but I did it then. And okay, I did it, and I can't unchange it. I can't undo it.
Yeah, it's like choices that once made, you can't unmake them. I
Right.
think is a lot of the vibe in this card. And um it is very difficult sometimes for people to accept, like, I am not the same person I was 10 years ago. Like, I am, of course I am. I'm
Yeah,
still
but
responsible for everything I've done
are
in my
any of
life, but
us.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm very different. And there are some things that have happened along the way in my life that I wish I would have chosen different actions to take, or maybe more accurately not taken certain actions, you
Right.
know. But everything that has happened, every choice I've made has conspired to make me who I am today. And I like that person. I'm getting to know her better. And you make a lot of choices in your life that once made can't be unmade.
Well, and the
And
other thing is there is no choice that a person makes in their life. I don't care, how well it turns out or how badly it turns out, or if it's just myth. There's no choice that anyone makes where they don't think about what would have happened if I had done the other thing. Sometimes it's like, oh, this turned out so well, and it's maybe just a little, oh, I wonder what that would have been like. It's not a big deal. And sometimes it's like, oh my God, why didn't I do that instead? Because this is just not what I wanted. But the only thing you can do then is make another choice. Am I going to stay here in not what I want, or am I going to do something else that might get me out of it? So,
Yeah,
and
I
that's
like that.
always, and the answer to that is always going to be, is going to have that duality. Even if it's 99% what was you wanted it is good, there's always going to be that little bit of thought somewhere, oh, I wonder what would have happened if I had done that, or if I had stayed there. And that's just human nature. There's not anything you can do about that.
You know, it's funny because I don't know where I read it or heard it, but they were talking about, you know, we walk in this world and we come across paths, and the path that we choose almost puts us into a different reality, and how you can't go back and enter in another reality. And the only way that you can kind of transverse between these realities, and I hope I'm using the right word, is to continue on your path, and each choice that you make will bring you into another dimension. So when you were talking about thinking, what would it have been like if I made another choice?
Right.
I mean, I love the idea of looking back with a sense of curiosity, just like, oh wow, I wonder what dimension, I would be living in right now if I had made that choice, but not to dwell on it in a very negative way where now I am kind of like unhappy where I am right now because I didn't
Yeah.
make maybe the choice that I thought I should have made. But you know what? You also don't want to dwell in the negativity. You want to try your best to kind of move forward and maybe take another path that will lead you in a direction that might make you happier, right? Like we have
Yes.
choices, and thank God that we have choices, right? Like, and as a woman, I am so grateful to all of the generations of women before us who did not have choices like we have today,
Yeah.
who did not, and who were very much criticized and condemned for choices that they did make that were not choices that were, how can I put this gently? Choices that were not
Accepted.
accepted, thank you very
Yeah.
much, accepted by males,
Men.
that were
Yeah.
accepted by the church or
Yeah.
religion, so to say. So I am so thankful that I have choices. And then I'm thinking about this card, and maybe the card is an invitation for whatever the question that you're asking it is, an invitation to say, okay, there must be a choice in this in the answer to your question, right? Maybe this question has to do with a choice, and maybe it's your job to figure out, well, what are my choices in this
Well,
situation? Because
and how am I gonna reconcile that? How am I gonna integrate those?
yeah,
If
and then
I have opposing ideas, or if I have, something that's, weighing on me and I'm not sure what to do, how am I gonna figure out, how to resolve that in a way that, I can still look at myself in the mirror, and I don't feel like I've compromised myself by doing it. Did you all ever
yeah.
see that movie Sliding Doors?
Oh, I heard of it, and I can't remember if I've seen it.
Oh,
If I did
Same.
see it,
I've
it
never
didn't leave
seen
an
it,
Oh
impact.
my
but
gosh,
I've
you need to
heard
see.
it.
I'm just gonna
Heard
give a
about it.
I'm just gonna give a quick thing. So it's Gwyneth Paltrow, who's problematic in her own self. But anyway, so it's really, she has a boyfriend. She's getting ready to go to work. She is in England. She's British. She goes down the subway. The first subway, the first thing, she goes down the stairs and runs down the stairs, and the train is just getting ready to leave, and the door opens and she runs through and it shuts and the train goes and then all of a sudden it rewinds and something happens, and she runs down the stairs, and as she's running down the stairs, there's a little girl with her mom coming up the stairs on the same side, and she's like playing with her doll on the hand railing, dancing around the hand railing, and so she has to go around this little girl with her mom and go down the stairs, and by the time she just goes around the girl, takes that time and goes to the stairs, the door closes and she can't get on and the train goes. And so everything follows from that. So in one scenario, she gets on the train and goes to work. On the second one, she misses the train, and another series of events happens, which I won't go into, but you should watch it. It's really good.
Sounds like a good movie. I think
Yeah.
what bugs me, I think I just finally put it into a sentence. What bugs me about the RWS lovers card is it shows a choice that's not really a choice. Like you are at a spot where you have to do the thing, whatever thing it is you're being herded to do. Or I feel like it's because like I said, they didn't go, well, let's stay here where it's nice. We're sorry we ate that. We're sorry we looked for the truth. We're sorry we looked for wisdom. And I feel like it's a very judgy card. I have a lot of problems with this card. I should
Well, I
probably
mean, when you look
sit
at
and
it, when you
meditate
look
with
at
it.
it from that point of view of the, of the church, it is because, but on the other hand, that was the rule. It's kind of about, it's all, I think it's also about rules, because sometimes we have to make choices for various reasons that are outside of the rules, whatever the rules are for that thing. And it's like the rule was you can have everything here except that. And that was too much.
Self-awareness.
For whatever reason, it was too much. Or, you could say, well, she could have blamed the snake, I guess, but she didn't. I don't even know. I haven't read the Bible story, the literal Bible story, since I was a kid. But so whatever happened, they transgressed on that one rule, and so that was the consequence. So and again, I think you have to also, sometimes you come up against a rule, or you come up against a social, I want to say a social moray, a social thing that, let's just say women wearing pants. I mean, that was just like, oh my God, 100 years ago, that was scandalous that women would wear pants. And now, now we've got men going to the Oscars in skirts. So, it's just,
Very true.
it's just a piece of cloth, whatever it is. It's just a piece of cloth covering your nakedness. How it's cut and how you wear it, who cares? It's just fabric.
Absolutely. So I want to go back to Adam and Eve for a moment.
All right.
And I wanted to talk about, so in Holistic Tarot by did I say it? Benabel. Yeah, I did say it
Benabel
right.
when
Yeah.
Yes, I did say it correctly. Okay. In the book, she talks about the card, and she talks about the two trees behind the two figures, right?
Mhm.
So behind the female, um, it's the tree of knowledge. It's a fruit-bearing tree, the tree of knowledge. And behind the male, it is the tree of life. And they talk about, so we know that Eve, she took the apple and she bit it. Even though she was told that if you do so, you're going to be kicked out of the Garden of Eden, right? And we can say or presume that the Garden of Eden was like heaven, right? It was just living in a place where everything was just going to be beautiful and you never had to worry about a thing. And when you think about the choice that she made, right, some might be like, oh my God, you made this choice to be out there in the world and have to come up with all of these things that are going on and the suffering and the choices and the blah, 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 when you could have been in a place where you didn't have to worry about anything. But if you think about it, like making the choice to take a bite of that apple and walk out of that Garden of Eden and experience the world for yourself, to me is like a gift, right? It's like a gift of, I'm going to experience the world how I choose to experience, not do it the way that somebody is telling me that I have, or not allowing me to see only one way that it's supposed to be, but going out in the world and just experiencing life. And yes, does that bring suffering and hardships? Yes, but on the opposite side of that, it can also bring lots of love, right? And happiness and
and
joy.
joy.
Yeah, so
You would
the
think,
fact that go ahead. No,
if you're
go ahead.
living in a place where everything is easy all the time, everything's just going to be fine. Like you're never going to be sad, probably, but you're never really going to be happy either. You're not going to know what it's
Yeah,
like to win, to achieve something, because everything is just handed to you, you know?
yeah,
Um,
exactly. So, I like to look at that. I like to look at, if I look at that card and I think of the religious context behind it, I want to say, man, fucking A.
Eat that apple.
A for getting out there and eating that apple and taking a chance. And in the holistic tarot, she refers to the tree of knowledge, which is the one that's behind her, the fruit bearing tree, that it's a symbol for the desire for sensation. Right. And if you think of ourselves as human beings, right, we have, well, there's the five senses that we all know of, and then the sixth sense, which, deals with like your power of vision and sight, right? But those senses are like beautiful. Like, could you imagine not being able to like sense things? Like, it's wonderful to sense things in a beautiful way, right? Like how wonderful something tastes. But it's also pretty interesting to taste something that's like yuck, I don't like that,
Or
and it's like,
you learn, it's all information, right? Our senses just give us
yes,
information. And sometimes it feels nice and sometimes it does not. And that's how we learn what we like and what we want and what we don't want. And the trick there is to be able to walk through life without pushing anything away or really, chasing just this one, thing.
yeah.
So there's
There,
a poem that I turned off my camera and everything because I was going through scroll searching, and you didn't want to look up my nose because I'm on my phone. But there's this poem that I came across a while back, and I absolutely love it. And it's exactly what you were saying, but it's called The Autobiography of Eve by Ansel Elkins. And I'm going to try to channel Amy Torok because she reads poetry so beautifully. Wearing nothing but snakeskin boots, I blazed a footpath, the first radical road out of that old kingdom toward a new unknown. When I came to those great flaming gates of burning gold, I stood alone in terror at the threshold between paradise and earth. There I heard a mysterious echo, my own voice singing to me from across the forbidden side. I shook awake, at once alive in a blaze of green fire. Let it be known, I did not fall from grace. I leapt to freedom.
I
yes. Oh, I
love that,
love that.
Linda.
So perfect. Let's
Yes,
hope that's where we're all headed today, guys. I can't wait
that
for this day to be
is.
over.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've called Virginia twice. Everything's going okay there. I have a friend who's a poll person in rural Virginia, and she asked me to check on her because she just didn't know what was going to happen. But everything seems to be okay. People are
So just
voting.
so
They're coming
our
in.
our listeners know, we record these recordings in advance. So today for us, at the day of recording this, is election day.
Yes.
So
And
how it will be when our listeners listen to the podcast,
yeah.
Hopefully,
we can
these are
only,
still legal
Yeah.
by the
yes.
time we're ready
Oh,
to post
yes,
it.
yes,
It's,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
So yeah,
okay.
so I feel like we have like we really delved pretty deep into the meaning of this card. And I did want to I wanted to, and I hope you guys don't mind, and I don't normally do this, but I really just loved, I have this book called Tarot, the Open Reading, and
Oh,
it was written by Yoav Ben Dov, and he, um, he remade a Marseille deck that's very similar to the original Marseille deck. Um, and this book is about all of the cards. It's like a guidebook to his deck. And I wanted to read a Greek mythology story relating to the lovers. And it says this. I'm just going to start reading from the beginning. In the New English decks, the card is called the lovers, but the French name, I'm not even going to say it, means the lover, a singular term. The Cupid above the central male figure may suggest that he is in love, but the women on his sides can be linked to a story about the mythological Greek hero Hercules. When Hercules was young, he pondered which way he should choose as his life path. One day he had a vision of two women standing at a crossroads. The woman on his left was young and seductive, symbolizing the path of easy satisfactions and sensual pleasures. And the woman on his right was older and modestly dressed, symbolizing the path of wisdom, virtue, and self-control. And I really like that because it goes back to the two trees, right? The tree of life and the tree of knowledge, and how sometimes we need, so when I look at the path of satisfaction and sensual pleasures, I also think of a path that we may take that comes from our emotions, our feelings. And sometimes that's necessary. Sometimes you need to kind of like lead with your heart and lead with this passion that you have inside of you to go someplace. And then sometimes you need to kind of shut that down a little bit, right? And just kind of make decisions based based off of more of an intellectual perspective, and take that path. But the fact that we have a choice to do either, and either can be wonderful, right? Both of them can lead you to a wonderful place, and then they can also lead you to not so great places, right? It's how you once you make the decision, it's how you direct yourself along the paths. But I really like that story because I had never heard it before until I read his book.
That is a very good story. Well, I might have heard it in the way back days. I've forgotten. I slept since then. But I also I don't want to choose one or the other. Life is both things. Life is
Mhm.
pleasure and pain. And you you learn no matter what you do. If you fuck up, you learn. If you do well, you learn. Um, if it doesn't turn, it's just more information.
Yeah, but you tend to learn more. You tend to learn more from the things that bring pain because it's like, oh, I don't like that. I think I won't do that again.
Pain is a great motivator.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
I mean, if you just keep choosing things that always bring you pleasure, you kind of keep choosing the same thing. And I don't know. And even when you choose a path that can be painful, you might meet somebody on that path that is very significant in your life later on. So, even if the whole experience wasn't pleasant, you might get something really valuable out of it besides the lesson that, you know,
I think there's
Yeah, and
value in every experience that you have
yeah,
on this planet. And some of it is hard won through suffering, for want of a better, suffering is suffering. If you can have a lot of it or you can have a little bit of it, and sometimes
right.
it does kind of drive you to a certain outcome or decision. And sometimes you have to endure it so
Yeah,
you can get to the other side of it. And then there's the good stuff,
yeah,
you know.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to go back to the lovers being looked at too, as like what its name um uh, represents, which is the lovers, right? So you can, and they do use the lovers card to indicate a maybe beginning relationship, right? That is one that could be one of like passion. And if you think about that, like a new relationship that you have with like, and I'm talking about a romantic relationship right
yeah,
now, but like a romantic relationship, you start off with usually a lot of chemistry, right? There's a lot of passion, there's a lot of fire. You're like choosing to be with this person because you have been attracted to them maybe at first because you thought they were handsome and they kind of, made you all tingly inside. And when they held you or they kissed you, they just like you have like this fire inside of you. And then you make the decision to be with this person. So the card can signify a relationship, right? It can signify maybe if it does come up in a reading, it could signify the beginning of a relationship, and maybe that's something like if maybe you were asking about your love life or a love interest that you had and the card came up, it could indicate that you're going in this direction, and maybe it's more so of your passion that's leading you, or maybe it might be the card may be asking you to look at it and say, okay, you have this decision to make. Do you want to continue being with this person? Do you want to pursue this relationship further? Are you doing this because it's totally based on passion? Or is there something else in this relationship, maybe that's a little bit more I keep saying intellectual, and I don't want to keep saying that word, but for the life of me, I can't think of another word to go along with it. But the one that's the non-passionate and the non-animalistic way that you can
Logical,
approach.
maybe.
Logical way. There you go. Okay, I like that. I'll go with that. The logical way, so maybe
Yeah, but
that
I
card, if
still
it does
think
come up, could be.
I still think, well, and obviously, if you're doing a reading for somebody else, and it's going to depend on the question they ask. But
Yeah.
I do think, in a lot of ways, that this doesn't have so much to do with a relationship with another person. But again, how are you? How are you as a person cultivating the things that you might have been like if you had broken up in a relationship because you were too needy, you were told that you were too needy, or you were told whatever. How are you addressing that, within yourself? Whether, and maybe you weren't too needy, maybe the other person was needy and they were projecting on you, but how are you doing the work to figure out how to become a more complete person, to be available for a relationship versus, it's about somebody else. I always feel like now when I look at this card, it's more about you, the person looking at the card, than it is about another person in your life, if that makes sense.
You know what? It could, right? Two things can be true at the same
Yeah,
time, right?
yeah,
That's what we
for
say
sure.
all the time,
Yeah,
right? And I think it really all depends on the kind of question that you're asking the card. Like, what exactly are you looking for when you ask the question? What are you looking for? What are you
yeah,
looking for the cards to help you understand about yourself? Are you looking for the cards to help give you a better, deeper understanding of yourself and the choices that you've made and where those choices have led you to your life right now?
right,
Or are you just being more kind of like not superficial, but more on the surface of
right.
just being like, hey, I have this decision to make. I don't know if I want to date this guy or if I want to date this guy, and the lover card comes up. It could be, okay, well, let's talk about both of them. Like,
Yeah.
why
Well,
would you want to go in either direction?
I had a woman come in, gosh, it's been a couple months ago, and she was in her 50s, I guess, and she wanted fortune telling, is what she wanted. And I don't do fortune telling, but I did this reading, and then I got to a couple of cards, and she was like, well, and I was like, okay, well, let's go there. So I turned over a card, and it was the Two of Cups. And so I told, what I said was, I kind of went into the card and what it was, and I was like, I'm not going to say that you're going to, but what will, I think what you're looking for is you want a person who's going to have this kind of heart connection versus somebody that you're just going to, you want that real connection. And she was like, you're right. Okay. And then she asked me to pull a couple of cards for, a card for each of her two sons. And that turned out to be pretty good. But she came in really wanting fortune telling, and I don't do fortune telling. And I tell people that up front, just like the lady that I had, this woman come in last week. She was in her 80s, very sharp, just sharp as a tack. And she had kind of been walking down the street, and she saw the sign outside that said readings, and she passed it by, and then she kind of was like, because the holistic fair was the next day. She's like, I'll wait till the holistic fair. And then she's like, oh, they're right here. So she came in and she had a reading, and she was really mad at her dead husband. She was really mad at her dead husband. And the sign on the door says something about, psychics or whatever. And I said, I'm not a psychic. I'm not a medium. I do tarot card readings. I'm going to tell you right up front, and this is how I do it. And she, in the discussion, that we were having, she kind of used the word charlatan a couple of times, and not to me, but, in the general sense of she didn't want to be taken advantage of. And I was like, and I get that. And I said, I'll be happy to do these cards, and we'll see. And she was like, okay. It was 30 minutes. So, so she came back, and it was a very interesting reading, and a lot of things, a lot of swords at the beginning. There was justice and the 8 of swords. And she asked some questions like, well, what about the blindfold? And what about, and I said, well, sometimes people can put a blindfold on you, and sometimes you just don't want to see what's in front of you. And she was like, oh, okay. So we went around, and a lot of swords and a lot of pentacles. And then I said something about, well, I didn't know how old she was, but I figured she was older than I was. And then she said she was like in her 80s, but she was very sharp, and she said, I said, so, but you have longevity in your family. And she goes, oh yeah, all the women in my family live to be at least 100. I said, so you've got some time. So it's time, I was looking, I said, it's time for you to invest in yourself, because I think you've spent, and her husband been dead about 3 years. And I said, I think you've spent plenty of time being mad at somebody who's not even here anymore to do anything about it. And I think now you need to just put paid to that and think about these other things. And she was like, I think you're right.
That's great. That turned out really, really well.
Yeah, but it was so interesting, that her attitude. And I said, well, she shook my hand. She told me her name was Judy. I was like, thank you. And I said, well, come back and see me if you feel moved to. And she said, I just might.
Very nice.
Awesome. But yeah, I mean, so many times people come in and they want, if this, the card comes up, they're like, oh, am I gonna, what's wrong with my lover? Am I gonna get a lover or whatever? It's like, it's not, it's not that, I can't predict that for you. I can't, in fact, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and the woman was pulling cards for the month, and they were very interesting cards. And the whole time, every time she'd pull a card, she'd say, and remember, this is not predictive. This is not predictive. We're in a high anxiety, high emotions, situation right now here in the country because of the election and everything. But these are not predictive. This is just what we're, energy to work with through the month of November, regardless of the election, And so I appreciated, her saying that, because a lot of people just want to take it literally and like, oh, you said this was going to happen, blah, blah, blah. Like, no, I really didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. And it can open, I think this system opens your mind's eye in a way that really works for me. And it can always show you something, but yeah, don't give your power over to a deck of cards. It is still just a deck of cards.
Yeah, exactly.
There's nothing magical or evil or good or, as far as I'm concerned. I know some people have a different relationship with the tarot, but
well, I mean, it's like pulling out your Freud book every time you have a burst of angst, or pulling out your psychology book. It's like, do I have this problem? Or, it's the same kind of thing. It's like, all of it is
looking up WebMD,
and
typing in the symptoms that you have to see exactly what ailment, and then you get a list of 20 things that you could be suffering from, and about 15 of those are some type of cancer, and now you're freaking out because you're like, oh my God, I got cancer and I'm going to die.
Yeah.
You just had, strep throat or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think both of you do a beautiful job in looking at the images on the card and talking about what you see those images saying to you. And I think that's like a very important thing. And I think we've stressed this in other episodes, how when you're first starting out with tarot, that looking at the images and making a connection to those images and really looking at the actions and just like what is happening, who is there, how many people are there, who do you identify with in the picture, can really help you kind of get an understanding of what the card is saying to you, you know, and as far as the lover goes with the Marseille deck, you know, the fact that there are also three figures in there, right? So you have one figure, the male in the middle, and two on the opposite ends, you know, can also signify like a really difficult choice that you have to make
Yeah.
about two things. You know, it doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily have to be relationships, you
Yeah.
know, but it
Exactly.
could be. And they also refer to it as, you know, you're in a relationship and things may be kind of rocky, right? And we all have that. All of us can be in relationships, and there are times when things are not really going very well. And the card can come up, and it could also be an indicator that maybe there is something else that's kind of coming in the middle of the two of you, right? And we know in families, it could be a mother-in-law, it could be a mother, it could be a child, it could be anybody that
Yeah.
could kind of just be that third person that maybe you are arguing about something and it relates to this one person. Or do you know what I mean? So like there's so many different ways that you can kind of approach it, that some may look at it as being, oh, that's very psychic, but when you really think about it from a psychological perspective, if there are three people there, maybe there are three individuals that are involved in this situation, you know?
Yeah.
So, like, really using that picture, and really thinking about what your question is and what is going on in your life can really help too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it
Yeah.
can even be about, not even another person, but a something that has been stressing out the relationship, money, or what is the third entity over here that's coming in between and causing the strife.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. This went much longer. And I know, I think I said this the last episode and the episode before that, that we did I think we did a pretty
We
good
always have
job
more to
One of
say
talking.
these
than we
days,
think
you're
we
going to
will.
realize that we will never run out of things to say.
Yeah.
I guess so. I guess so.
So we should pull some cards, I think. And
Oh,
this
I
is
think
what
that's a
I
great idea.
did. I pulled my
Yes,
lover's card out, and then I pulled
I did
two
too.
cards for kind of like advice on how to approach choice, and then a
Yeah.
third card down so it's like a diamond shape. And I pulled for how do I approach choices. On the left-hand side, I got the Queen of Wands, and on the right-hand side, I got the Page of Wands, and then the advice for how to do is Temperance. So
Okay,
I thought
so
that was
say
kind
that
of funny.
again. You have the lovers, and then you have one on either side, and then you have one at the bottom.
Yes.
Okay.
So the
And I think
cards on the opposite sides of the lovers are just two ways that you approach making
approach
choices.
making like really important choices, and how, because the
Huh.
lovers, to me, they always look kind of stuck, right? They're like, now what? And so
Oh my God.
my getting the Queen of Wands and the Page of Wands, how I approach choices is pretty accurate. I think I either know exactly what I want, and I can tell you, 100%, or I'm kind of Page of Wands. I'm kind of like, why do I have to choose? Let me just um
Why not
think about
both?
it for a while. Yeah.
Why not both?
Why can't I have both? And then the advice is Temperance. So shut up,
Yes,
Tarot.
but
Just shut up.
temperance is not just about moderation, which is what I think of when
It's
I think of the word. It's
blending the two
also
things.
blending. And
Mhm.
it's again that mixing of duality and turning it into something, integrating it, and making it malleable and molding it into something that works.
Yeah, and
You
see, I
see,
was
and
just
I think
complaining
that
about
what
how
you're
you can't, you never feel like you can make the right choice. Like there's never, I want a yes or no answer, Tarot. Why won't you ever give it to me? And Tarot basically is like, yeah, dummy, like you said, there's really, you just got to try. You just got to be like, part of me is way over here and wants to do this thing, and the other part of me is way over there and wants to do the other thing. So you have to figure out how to get those two parts to get along and make a choice that you can live with.
Okay, well, here's mine. On the left-hand side, I have the Eight of Cups, which is perfect because half the time I just say fuck it and walk away. Not even gonna worry about it. Just gonna leave. Been there, done
We will
that.
let this decision make itself.
Yeah, done. When I'm done, and when I'm done, I'm done. And let me tell you, I'm just giving you this as a description of me as a Taurus Scorpio. When you are dead to me, you are dead. Okay. So the other one is the moon. And so in which case, I'm just going to howl at the moon and eat lobster.
Well, that's a way to do it.
Well, but so the moon, so if I don't walk away, what I'm going to do is I'm really going to go inward, and I'm going to go deep, and I'm going to figure it out. And I may use some esoteric methods, and I may use some methods that you don't understand, but I will figure it out. That's what the moon says. And then what was the third one? What do you call it, Angie?
It's kind of how to blend those two things, how to make peace, I guess.
Well, I got the Seven of Pentacles, which is kind of interesting because to me that just says if you don't pick the route of just saying screw it and walking away, you have to do the work. You have to do the work. And
totally.
even if you walk away, sometimes you have to do the work anyway, because you have to reconcile it within yourself.
Right. There's always work, right?
Yeah.
When you make a choice,
even if you're not in the situation anymore, if you've left the situation, you still have to, if you're going to go forward, you still have to reconcile it inside yourself. Even if you're not with the person or in, the job or whatever it is that you left, you still have to figure out, all that angst and stuff that's going. Because I still sometimes have to deal with the shit from leaving TTS, So yeah.
All right, that was good. I have the Ace of Pentacles and the Four of Wands as my two choices, or my two ways that I approach choices. So, when I look at the Ace of Pentacles, obviously it's like a beginning, something new, right? So if I think of this idea of how do I approach choices, maybe I look at some choices as just being like, all right, this is a new beginning to creating something for myself, right? Looking at it from a fresh perspective, or looking at it maybe a little bit more of, I have the potential to do something, right? So that kind of, maybe that can stir up inside of me some like excitement for this choice that I'm going to make, because I know that I can make the decisions that I need to make this particular choice happen for me, and then I look at the Four of Wands, and part of me wants to say that it's like stability and security, which fours are. So maybe with how do I approach choices, it's either I'm gonna like take a chance and I want to be really excited about something, and that's going to drive me, or am I just going to stick with what's stable and secure for myself?
Okay, I'm
and sort of.
going to give you two phrases. Okay, Ace of Pentacles, gather your resources. Four of Wands, access your community.
Okay, I can see that. Like,
The
gather
Ace
your
of Pentacles
resources and
too is how much skin are you going to put in this game?
Right.
How much do you want to put into this choice? And I think the Four of Wands being it's a pretty happy card, like you said, it's kind of celebratory, and so I think that you are probably pretty skilled at navigating that hallway, if you want to call it that, between those two things, because of all the work you've done in your recovery. Like you
Mhm.
really have to think about
But
the choices.
also, yeah, and also reaching out, like if you're having a hard time making a choice, go to the community or your community of friends, get input, get, support from them. Obviously you're going to have to make the choice, but to know that you have a community of people that you can seek support from. And it's
Oh,
not,
absolutely.
that
Absolutely.
that's really what Four of Wands says to me in this case. Again, I kind of see you in the Ace of Pentacles. It's like, oh, I got my notebooks, I can journal, I've got this, I've got my research to do, I've got, all the stuff I can do to get all the information that I need to get to make this stuff. I just see you gathering all these things together and like, now I'm going to study and I'm going to make this choice. That's I just see you doing that in that Ace of Pentacles.
And I can see myself doing that too, Linda. Yes, I can.
Yeah.
I can see myself doing both there. And I
Yeah.
guess the reason that I went in the direction that I first talked about with like the choice of staying secure
Yeah.
or taking like a chance, right? Realizing that I do have the potential to do something the way that I want to, and I don't necessarily have to stay with what's secure and comfortable, that I can kind of like go outside the box, so to say, is because the advice was the Eight of Swords. And to me, the Eight of Swords is like what you were saying, Linda, before with that 80-year-old woman that came into your shop. It's like, take off the freaking blindfold, untie yourself, remove those swords, and just fucking do it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
don't sit there and be, trapped by these negative thinkings of whatever they might be. Just kind of like take everything off, set yourself free, and just do what you feel is right for you without worrying of like what others might think or that I can't do it, like all the negative kind of
That's
talk
awesome.
that you have
That's
doing
awesome.
to yourself. So thank you for all of your input and insights into this card. And I hope that our listeners got a lot. There was a lot of things that we spoke about. And, it might be one of those episodes that you might have to go back and listen to again just to kind of get everything
Get all
that
the pieces.
to get all the pieces and put them together. But so thank you so much for joining us. And
Next time we'll do 7. We'll do the chariot.
all right, friends, have a good night.
Thank you, you too.